Let me tell you a story. When I was 21, I was a junior in college. And during that time, it was the time of the disease that everybody got in 2020. And because of that, classes were different. Instead of having 24 people per class, you'd have about 12 or 10. And because of that, to fit all the students in, we had to spread out the classes. So the 10 a.m.s moved down to 8, so you could have an 8 p.m. class and a 9 p.m. class. That sucked because a lot of us had to wake up earlier. And people like me that worked night shifts, that sucked. I worked at a Wendy's and I would close, barely sleep, and then go to school. One of those classes that I attended was Music History 2, which, let me tell you, freaking awesome. We learned about the late classics, the early romantics, the late romantics, and a little bit after that. Good times, great stuff. And I remember learning about Hector Berlioz. We were listening to Symphonie Fantastique. We were just wrapping up the final movement when all of a sudden, my professor, who was pretty well-kept and not very bombastic, yells out, "Hector's going to hell! Hector's going to hell!" Woke me up, I'll tell you that. There's never been an energy drink in my life that has worked as well as my professor yelling like this. So the question is, why is Hector going to hell? Well, let me tell you all about that. My name is Chris. This is Chris Price Music. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And today, we're talking about the most down bad composer in history. Why do I say that? Oh, let me tell you. All right, let's start when he was very young. So, he is the son of a doctor who's atheist and a stay-at-home mom, and she was very devout Catholic. At a young age, Berlioz wasn't exposed to much music education, but he took a big interest in the guitar as well as singing. When he was 12, he met this girl that was 18, and he fell absolutely in love with her, writing about how he loved her feet and other weird things. We're not at a great start, Berlioz. You're a little bit of a weird guy. So he wrote a melody for her, and that melody would later be used inside Symphonie Fantastique. But of course, she was unaware of his liking, probably because he was 12, and so Berlioz went on with his life, not thinking about that again. When he got older, he decided to go off to college and pursue medical like his dad wanted him to, but he did not really enjoy it. And at that time, he was engaged to this girl named Maria, and when Berlioz finished up college, he decided, I hate medical stuff, I'm going to go ahead and pursue music. So from then on, he just started composing a lot of random stuff, and eventually one of his pieces, he decided to submit for the Prix de Rome. It failed. He decided to go again. It failed. He went again, and it won. And the Prix de Rome is a big thing. The Prize of Rome, I'm pretty sure, is what that translates to. And because of that, he got offered a scholarship where he would go to Rome, far away from Paris. Also, that piece that he submitted would later become a piece called March to the Scaffold, which is the fourth movement of Symphonie Fantastique. That's a very important piece, and I'll get to that pretty soon. So when he was over in Rome, he learned that Maria called off the engagement and went for this big business guy instead. So what did he do about the situation? He decided he was going to leave Rome, murder Maria, her new fiancé, and himself. Awesome. He created this whole complex plan where he would be dressed as a maid and would shoot her, shoot him, and then himself. While he was on his way to Rome, he realized he forgot his disguise and decided, you know what, I'm crazy, I'm not going to do this, and went back. And when he was in Rome, he met his next love interest. Who was this love interest? Harriet Smithson, who was an Irish-born Shakespearean actress. Berlioz, a French speaker who didn't know any English, decided to go see some Shakespearean plays, and he fell in love with Harriet right away. He was enamored by her beauty. He would send her lots of fan mail in French, and she really would not know what he was saying. Eventually, he decided to move in right next to her without her really knowing, and he would spy on her at night. Down bad, let me tell you. Of course, Harriet rejected all of his advances, and this made him go a little bit crazy. And while Hector was working on his first symphony, he was overdosed on opium and love and hatred of himself, and he wrote out the fifth movement of Symphonie Fantastique all in one night. Now, let's get into the story of Symphonie Fantastique. This character, definitely not Berlioz, was in love. He was enamored by this girl, who is represented as a melody called the Idée fixe, or fixed idea. In the second movement, we get a ballroom scene where he catches glimpses of her and wants to get close to her, but ultimately fails. In the third movement, he decides to get away from it all, move to the countryside, but the storm rages in and he hears the Ide fix. He thinks about her, he goes mad, and then the fourth movement, he overdoses on opium, kills her, kills some other people, and then gets executed with a guillotine. The fifth movement is absolutely amazing. I just want to set the stage here. The character is now in hell. And while in hell, he hears laughs, screeches, all these weird, spooky sounds. And then he hears the Ide fix. He thinks, no way, that can't be her. But the Ide fix is a little demented with that E-flat clarinet. And then it hits him. The stab, the panic, everything. Oh no! And then he realizes it's her as a demon stripper. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to say this. Berlioz, you are a genius for a lot of the stuff inside here. The rhetoric is amazing. And as a composer myself, I know rhetoric always wins. You can feel everything here. The demonic atmosphere, the panic. Just, it's wonderful. So, of course, this is basically the telling of Berlioz in hell. And while he's inside there, he hears church bells, probably his funeral, and he hears the Dies Irae. The Dies Irae is a Gregorian chant that would usually mean somebody died. They would sing it at funerals, and it was very melancholic. Now, this erupted some anger with Catholics in the area because he just put a stripper tune with this very sacred piece. So some feathers were ruffled, but nonetheless, it happened. And yes, this is the exact same Dies Irae that was used inside The Shining. And everything else, basically. Before this, the Dies Irae was kind of popular, not really, but after this, Berlioz really set the stage for it, and his instrumentation for the Dies Irae is also amazing. At the time, the tuba was not invented yet, so what did he do? He used this thing called the ophicleide, which is kind of like a bass clarinet mixed with a tuba-ish. It was a keyed brass instrument, which already should raise some red flags. So because of that, it had this weird, harsh sound to it, which honestly works very well for the piece. Even after the tuba was invented, it was imperative to have the ophicleides play instead, because it really matches the tone he was going for. So after hearing that, he's in hell. And what happens next? A fugue. And if you're a mere mortal like I am, you'll know that fugues are hell. So he put his hell in his hell. And then later, he shows some more rhetoric. The violins take their bows, turn them upside down, and hit the wood against the string. And that's how we get a lot of connotation for spiders and other spooky Halloween things. This guy's very important. He invented so much connotation that we get in music now. Of course, this ends with some amazing fun brass stuff, a few polyrhythms here and there, and the ultimate, very loud chord at the end. It's triumphant, it's brilliant, it's dramatic. It was so ahead of its time. It was wonderful. So when he premiered the piece, he invited Harriet Smithson to come along, and she decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And what was very unusual for the time was this piece was programmatic, meaning there was a story behind it. Before this, music rarely had a story behind it. It was usually just a concept, a theme, inspiration, not a full, drawn-out, dramatic story. So he writes up the story in all the programs, hands them out, and wants people to see it. And then when eventually Harriet starts reading, she realizes, oh my goodness, this is me. What the heck? And after the performance, Berlioz asked if Harriet could go see her, and she agreed. And while there, he confessed his love. She denied him. He said, please marry me. She said no. He drank poison. She said yes. He drank an antidote, and they were happily married at the end. Nah, far from it. During this marriage, it was happy at the start, according to the memoirs. Of course, they're memoirs, so who knows if Berlioz is embellishing some things. Let's take his word and say it was happy. It eventually was not happy. As a big, awesome, famous composer, he would go around everywhere, and while going around everywhere, he would cheat on Harriet. And when she found out, she became a drunk, and very depressed and very sad, took a toll on her health, and she died. After Harriet died, Berlioz decided to marry the woman he was cheating on her with. And then eventually she died, and then he had some flings with some unknown people. It's kind of funny because one of the people that he had a flings with, he didn't keep good contact with her and didn't know that she died until he walked by her grave. Oops. But in the end, he reunited with his first love interest, Marie, and they lived happily ever after until he died. So happy ending, I guess, but here comes the question. Does Hector really deserve to go to hell? Well, he was a bit of a creep, and subjectively, that's not my call to say. I am not the judge. But yeah, that was Berlioz, the most down bad composer in history. What a weirdo. But his music is felt everywhere. Today, we get his music in The Shining, as I mentioned before, with the Dies Irae. When you open up the movie Mad God, you hear his amazing fanfare at the beginning, and you hear his inspiration everywhere else. He truly is one of the greatest composers that ever has lived, even though he's down bad. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you liked it. Share it with a friend if you really liked it. And yeah, get back to practicing. I know you need to practice your music.